BPT because I was not focused in the exercises. But I do agree. I do agree.
Mireia, I have one
just want to add.
Also, listen to you. My suggestion to you is, as you mentioned, the paper is too much focused on China. So bringing Japan and Korea in a more balanced way is recommended. And in doing so, it's advisable to look at the strategic partnership agreements of the European Union with the respective countries. In strategic partnership agreements, they are stipulating the future agenda for cooperation with these countries, C and J and K. So in there, probably you can find some digital chapter or clause. There they may have deployed or they may have presented a few agenda bilateral cooperation, and then probably you could, especially in this digital area, probably the degree and the depth of cooperation between EU, China, Japan, Korea could be different. So commonalities and similarities could be found there, identified. That's my suggestion to you.
Anna do you want to talk to Mireia something?
Yeah, I had one comment, if we have time.
Yeah.
And just to tell you, Maria, I think it's a really important subject you have. I'm really pleased it's included as a chapter. I was just wondering about, because you mentioned in the slides that you are going to use role theory, but this is still, I mean, this is still very much a policy analysis.
Yes.
So I just wondered how you're going to make, you know, how you're going to construct that bridge, and I suppose it has to be constructed through Chinese foreign policy and the digitization of that, which is, I think, you know, it's a very fruitful way of going, because then you can connect it to lots of different things.
I thought at the beginning, so here we have, the thing is, here we have the monograph and the series, right? So I may slightly confused, and that's why I noticed this morning. So I was focusing first of all in the role theory, because I remember we talked about this conceptualization, right? So I was having that in mind. So I structure and think about the paper from that perspective. Later on, I think it might be, it has to be revised, because if it's going to be more focused within this framework of EU-Asia connectivity, and as a policy briefing, for example, if we include the case of Korea and Japan, and we do this kind of exercise for commonalities or similarities, then this theoretical framework might need to be also revised a lot of, frankly speaking. So that it's something that I might change it as well.
Right.
So, okay, colleagues, let's go over to the last paper by Pavel and Thomas. You have your 10 minutes.
Okay.
저희도
시작하는 중국 인터넷 상태 너무 안 좋은 거예요.
지금 독일이 좀
중국하고 좀 됐다.
아까 독일에 들어갔던 그래요.
Okay, so does anyone can see my presentation or not?
Yeah.
Yep. Super.
Okay, so okay, is it in full screen mode?
Yes.
Okay. So briefly, just as we have a preliminary title here, like trade and investment policies in EU-Asia connectivity, and a few slides about what we are going to talk about in our paper. So the structure is quite simple here. So we'll have this introductory part. I'll tell a bit about that later. And then we have the policies in trade and investment areas. And then we have, we'll try to analyze flows of trade and investment with assessment of what kind of results, of effects we'll have from the policy in trade and investment area. And yeah, some conclusion part, of course, included. So our goals are, as you can see here, so first, we'll try to analyze the trade and investment policy flow. So we'll start with the beginning of the 90s, when the first toward New Asia strategy was introduced, and then it developed in several other documents. I show them later, but probably you are aware of them, all of them. Then we'll try to, basing on available data, to analyze trade and foreign direct investment. If we are talking about trade, it's much easier, of course, because there are a lot of different databases we can retrieve the data from. A little bit more complicated situation is in foreign direct investment, but I think we can find some changes and some evidence which would be a base for our analysis here. And yes, the third goal is to assess the potential effects of entering into force of trade and investment agreements. And the fourth one is estimation of the effects of trade and investment policy liberalization. So we formulated two main hypotheses. The first one, we are talking about the possibilities of obtaining benefits from liberalization of exchange between EU and Asia. And we are thinking and we are asking ourselves if it depends on the degree of current custom protection, if it depends on degree of integration within the global value chains, and we are asking ourselves about the similarities in export structure. So these benefits in our hypothesis depends on these three factors. And the second one, which will be tested here, is that the highest benefits from the liberalization of exchange can be obtained by countries where the current level of protection is the highest, in which the share of foreign value add in export is the highest. So we are talking here about this global value chains, or the value chains between Asian and European countries. And the similarity of export structure is the lowest. Of course, it can be more detailed, and it will be probably developed in the article, because if we are talking about the export structures, for example, we can think about the intra-industry trade or inter-industry trade. So it will be also touched in our article. Then research methods. So they are not very much sophisticated, but they will require some calculations. It is not econometrics per se, but some calculations are involved here. So restrictiveness of trade policy will be assessed based on current level of tariff rates and the level of non-tariff barriers and regulatory measures. So for similarity of export structures, we'll be using the revealed comparative advantage, the concept introduced by Balassa, and we'll calculate it for selected EU and Asia countries, the selected because there is a lack in data sometimes, and of course for some countries we don't have a developed ties between two parts. So yes, and the other also instrument we'll use will be estimation with use of Mahalanobis distances. So it will be calculated within the matrix, and we'll try to assess the similarity of this export structure. And the last one here is degree of production integration. It will be determined based on sharing of foreign value add from European Union in exports of selected Asian countries. These data are available in OECD statistics and also WTO. So yeah, it will be our methodology. Then yes, just briefly, probably you all are aware of documents and different kind of strategies of Europe that started at the beginning of the last decade of the 20th century, and we'll analyze some changes and why the policy towards Asia has changed. We'll also think about some, I would say, individualization of approach of European Union. So in the sense that since 2006, European Union started to concentrate not only on multilateral level of cooperation, but also on individual approach toward selected countries and also entities like ASEAN. In not in all cases it succeeded, of course, but we can frankly observe the increase of involvement of EU in the region. So in the table, I put it here, the agreements and the status of the agreement. So far, we have only a few agreements in force, but the process is on the way. So there are negotiations, and of course we should also distinguish between trade agreements and investment agreements, because these are the competence for negotiating and approving it lies in different hands in European Union. So it will be a kind of a description of what was going on and is going on in EU policy. Of course, we have some other approach of the EU, which develops also strategic partnership with selected countries, also with countries of Asia. But this will be not analyzed in details in that paper. It's not that aim and goal of this paper. If we are talking about the Asian perspective or Asian countries perspective, better probably, we should also think about some possibilities of collective or individual activities. So rather, we would think that motivations of countries of Asian countries are autonomous or individual. If you look at Korea, or if you look at Japan, probably these are more individual goals that would like to be fulfilled by these countries. Okay, and then the analysis, just shortly, I won't describe it in detail, but of course we could divide the period which started in our analysis in 1995. So in the almost the first year of introduction of New Asia towards New Asia strategy, and it ended in 2018. 2018, probably 2019 if data are available. So we'll try to describe what was going on in that period. and also we'll try to indicate and describe the factors that supported the development of this connection, trade and investment connection between countries, as well as those that limited them. So we'll indicate certain factors of that. And then the assessment part of this policy effectiveness, we were thinking about different approaches to do that, because at first we were thinking about comparing some dynamics between the trade and investment flows between countries after introducing the agreement between Europe and the European Union and individual countries. But because we don't have too much such agreement in force, it's not a very efficient instrument. So the preliminary results, or after some research, we made some preliminary conclusions that in case of access to European Union market, potential benefits of reducing trade barriers or complete elimination even seems to be negligible, because in Europe we have a relatively low level of protection. On the other hand, we could observe probably higher benefits from tariff reduction in developing Asian countries, where in some cases, the tariffs are quite elevated, and they have like several, even 13 percentage points. And then, the significant positive effect in the form of development of trade on preferential terms is possible in some individual countries, as mentioned here. And the last thing is that analyzing the structure of exports, it can be noticed that this intra-industry trade development or benefits from this development depends on FDI flows and degree of production integration within the global value add chain. And this preliminary analysis show us that the greatest opportunities are with connections with Japan, China, and Singapore, and some ASEAN countries also. On the other hand, we have this inter-industry trade where the great benefits can be caused by the liberalization of trade policy, but mostly in the countries where we have some large differences in the similarity of export structure. So the more similar the export structure is, the more benefits from inter-industry trade development, and on the other hand, the similarity in the structures of exportation can mean that in more developed countries in Asia, we can observe the benefits from intra-industry trade development. So this is, I guess, the final slide, and this is what we are thinking to talk about in our paper.
Thank you, Pavel. So, colleagues, any comments or questions?
I'd like to ask a very simple question in terms of the research methodology. So you're mentioning the restrictive trade policies can be assessed based on the current tariff rate and the level of non-tariff barriers and regulatory measures. And also the degree of production integration will be determined based upon the share of the foreign value added from the European Union. But I'm just curious, how do you estimate the non-tariff barriers, and how do you calculate the value added? There's very simple methodology questions.
Okay, so I think I pass the voice to Tomasz. Okay, so he'll answer your question. Okay.
Maybe we could estimate non-tariff barriers.
So there is some howling. So could you please turn off and turn on again?
Maybe we could estimate non-tariff barriers foreign value added, we estimate from database OECD and WTO. We compared foreign value added that comes from EU with total value of gross exports individual countries, individual Asian countries. Non-tariff barriers also we can measure it from firstly database of the World Bank, and secondly maybe we should estimate by jak jest model grawitacyjny handlu. Estimate by gravity model of trade. These estimates is already done. We have some data from this model, and we can compare these results with the database of World Bank.
Okay.
For me, it's quite a good side of the paper.
Sebastian.
Sebastian, you have some comments?
Well, yes, please. Well, thank you for your presentation. I think that the link between the trade aspect and the investment aspect, this is something that that you could still, or that would be good to have a clear focus on the role of both for economic relations between the EU and Asian actors and partners. You have shown that table of the ongoing negotiations between the EU and the bilateral negotiations. For instance, in the case of China, they are negotiating that bilateral investment agreement, right? But not trade. So what are the implications of that, actually? in the case of let me think, of Singapore, there are different. There is a trade and an investment agreement. What are the implications? I mean, what does that mean for the economic connectivity, for the connectedness between the EU and Asia and its and the policies? This is all linked to the question of regulatory environment, and the EU wants to that the EU wants to shape in specific ways that is sustainable. And so if you could provide more kind of conceptual information that relate to the empirical, to what we can observe in the specific countries, then you'd have a solid framework where to locate your economic analyses in, right?
Thank you, Sebastian, for your comments. And yes, as I mentioned, you know, the trade and investment are treated differently because of different kind of competences, and it was to be also included in the analysis in the policy. Maybe I was too short, because I would like to describe it as the most widest way as possible. So I mentioned about the strategic partnerships and this kind of things that are probably creating environment for economic ties, but probably from this strict point of view of trade flows and investment flows are not that important, but they create an environment in which the countries cooperate. So yes, I will try also. We will try also to describe this specificity of trade agreements, also investment agreements, and what even more, because of we are talking about trade and investment, we should also think about the production networks, because we invest in order to produce and then to sell it back to Europe, right? For example, in one case. And so this is kind of the links we are going to think of and research on, and try to draw some conclusions from that. So thank you for your comment, and we will do our best to introduce it in the way you mentioned.
Thank you. Yeah.
So, Pavel, I have one comment to your paper. One comment, before giving you comment, I have the impression that this paper is very ambitious in terms of the coverage of the paper, because you are looking at the trade barriers, tariff, non-tariff barriers, and regulatory measures. So how to measure that is a issue. And also you are calculating the RCA as well as the degree of production integration. So this is very comprehensive. And each of these three items or can deserve one paper. So in my view, it's very ambitious, but I think you can do. That's fine. My comment actually is about the slide number 11, and you have identified three distinctive stages in the development of EU-Asia trade. So how did you identify that? I mean, what are the, is that the criteria of trade volume or FTA?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. This is yeah, based on the tendencies. Okay, so after completing the Uruguay round, there was a quite good environment for trade, investment, and all these activities just developed by the beginning of the 21st century, where we had a dot-com crisis and before Asian financial crisis. So from that point of view, development of trade and investment was quite good one. After that, 2003 and 8, we had 8, of course, is the global financial crisis as a date. But 2003 is after the economic recovery, we could say we could observe also the increase in production networks actually. So it was that time where the production networks, global value chain were developing, and it was again quite important for EU and Asia relations, because we could observe from in that period that Europe and Asia are more and more involved in value chains. So
I got it.
we calculated or we checked the statistics, and the foreign value aid in Korean, not only Korean but also Asian countries, gross exports was growing at that time. So from that point of view, it is.
Yeah.
Yeah, and the third period, yes, after the crisis. So in that period we couldn't find a strong tendencies actually in that period. So it was also influenced by some different factors at that time. So yeah, because of trade volume, investment volume, also this was the main criterion for distinguishing these 3 sub periods.
Thank you very much. So, colleagues, do you have any further comments or questions?
No.
Probably we have to wrap up now. Then it was a long day today. I mean, it's not easy to have a 3-hour virtual meeting like this, right? Because if we are in the same room, then it's much easier and better to discuss. But I appreciate your participation. I appreciate your efforts to deliver the paper proposals in time. And I'd like to wrap up in 3 points. Number 1 is we have to have really pay attention to the paper, the project title EU-Asia connectivity, right? So EU-Asia connectivity should be the main theme of each paper. Number 2 is Sebastian is going to write the conceptual paper, and probably in some place of your paper, probably you have to mention, or you have to frame, and you have to help us design the whole research by mentioning each topical areas like sustainability, energy, digitalization, and trade and investment as areas for EU-Asia connectivity and cooperation. And finally, I like to, I have thought about the order of paper if we submit the papers to the journal. Probably Zhonghen newspaper could be the last one, because this is kind of analyzing the semantic, providing the semantic analysis. So, I mean, I'm open to discussion, but it's my first thought to put Zhonghen newspaper as our last kind of, not concluding, but the last paper. We have had a limited time for our discussion today. It's now getting dark outside of the university now. So I'd like to invite you all to give, if possible, written comments to everybody, right? So I will also give some written comments to everybody, and my assistants will also summarize the discussions we had. So the question and comments we have given to our presenters will be kind of summarized and will be shared with you. So that's my last comment, and probably and hopefully let's meet in Germany in person.
Yes. So
Yeah.
November.
Let's hope.
Yeah.
Let's hope.
Yeah.
Let's hope.
So appreciate your long time and your efforts to be there and to be with us, to be together, and to share your views. And thank you very much for the meeting.
Thank you.
Thank you. Nice meeting all of you.
Any final comments from your side?
Just thank you.
No, thank you.
Yeah, good sharing.
Yeah, okay.
Right.
Yes. I think this was